The Crystal Empire was a place where crowns were not forged of gold, but grown of living star crystals, each shard humming with the voices of past rulers. These shards fused to the skulls of chosen heirs, glowing with authority, and their light was said to bind empires together. For Kale, a human prisoner dragged before the throne for trespassing in forbidden lands, it was nothing more than a spectacle of power. Shackled, bruised, and mocked, he was brought into the shimmering hall, where Princess Elira awaited her coronation. The crown pulsed with light upon its crystalline pedestal, alive and waiting for her touch. When Kale was thrown at her feet, the crowd jeered. Elira looked down on him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. She had never seen a human this close before. The council demanded his execution, claiming his kind were trespassers, thieves, and liars. Yet Kale, even as he knelt, did not beg. His eyes burned with defiance. That defiance, so alien to the crystal-born nobility, was what made Elira hesitate, and in that hesitation, fate intervened. As Kale was yanked upward by guards, he twisted, striking out in desperation. His chained wrist crashed against the pedestal. The shard meant for Elira's crown fractured with a piercing scream of light, a sound that split the hall like thunder. The chamber erupted in chaos as crystal dust rained down, glowing and searing into Kale's flesh. The shard struck both Kale and Elira, embedding slivers of starlight into their bodies. Elira screamed as the crystal burned into her brow, and Kale collapsed as a glowing vein of light slashed through his chest, embedding itself in his heart. In the chaos, the crown that should have made her empress shattered instead, its light bleeding across the floor like spilled fire. Silence followed. Elira and Kale lay on the ground, breathing raggedly, their bodies faintly pulsing in rhythm. The crystal tether glowed between them like a living thread, binding prisoner and princess together. The council recoiled in horror, shouting blasphemy. The crowd muttered of curses and omens. Yet none could deny the truth. Something ancient had chosen them both. As Kale's vision dimmed, he felt something impossible, a rush of emotions not his own. Grief, longing, and the crushing weight of duty. Elira's heart pressed unwillingly into his own. Elira, in turn, felt his stubborn defiance, his hatred of chains, his raw will to survive. They gasped together, neither able to sever the bond. The throne room stood frozen, all power silenced by the impossible. The crown had shattered, yet its light had chosen not one ruler, but two. Kale awoke in a chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. Walls of crystalline facets reflected dim light into infinite patterns, shimmering with alien beauty. He struggled to rise, but pain seared through his chest where the shard had fused. His veins faintly glowed, each pulse echoing like a heartbeat of light. Across the chamber sat Elira, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp and furious. "You've ruined me," she hissed. Her once pristine brow now bore a jagged scar of crystal, incomplete and fractured. A princess without a crown was no princess at all. Kale, still chained to the floor, smirked through his exhaustion. "Didn't mean to," he rasped. "But you're welcome." His defiance only deepened her rage. Yet as she stood to berate him, the bond pulsed. Both froze, clutching at their chests as emotions surged between them. Elira gasped as she felt his memories flash through her. The biting wind of human camps, the endless toil of servitude, the desperate fire that kept him alive. Kyle staggered as he felt hers. A lifetime of cold duty, of being raised as an object for the crown. Her desires, suppressed in service to tradition. Their breaths synced, unwillingly drawn into each other. Elira tried to sever it, summoning her crystal magic to break the tether, but each strike rebounded into her own flesh. Kale, mocking but shaken, whispered, "Guess we're stuck with each other." The truth sank heavy in her chest. For the first time, her thoughts were not her own. For the first time, she was vulnerable. Days passed and the bond only deepened. Arguments sparked like firestorms, Elira furious at his insolence, Kale mocking her arrogance. Yet beneath the clashes grew an undeniable thread of understanding. He laughed at things she had never dared to laugh at. She revealed pains he never thought an alien could feel. Their conversations became as much battles as lifelines. Servants whispered of blasphemy. Council members demanded Elira cast him aside, or have him killed, but she could not. The bond would not allow it. If he died, so would she. And in the stillness of night, when crystal light dimmed, Elira found herself staring at Kale, not as a prisoner, but as the only one who saw her not as heir, but as a person. Their tether, once cursed, began to feel less like chains and more like a bridge neither dared admit they wanted. The council chamber echoed with fury as nobles in jeweled masks demanded justice. Elira stood before them, Kale shackled beside her, both tethered by the glowing shard vein between them. "The bond is infection!" one elder roared, his mask pulsing with crimson crystal. "It must be severed before the throne itself rejects. You!" Elira, trembling but unyielding, tried to reason. "The shard chose. It cannot be undone." Yet her words rang hollow among the elite, who hissed of curses and corruption. Kale leaned forward, despite chains biting into his wrists. "Funny," he spat. "You preach of crowns and destiny, but the moment it doesn't fit your perfect little plan, you call it blasphemy." His defiance silenced the chamber for a moment. No human had ever dared speak so boldly. Enraged, the council tried to strip Elira's fragment with ritual blades of obsidian. As they pressed the dark stone to her brow, the shard flared, lashing out in searing arcs of light. Crystalline vines struck the nobles, slicing their jeweled masks and leaving bloody cuts beneath. Gasps filled the chamber. Even shattered, the crown defended her. Even fractured, it recognized Kale's bond. Rumors spread like wildfire through the empire. Whispers of prophecy, of a throne reborn in fracture. Some whispered Elira was chosen for greatness. Others whispered doom. And always eyes lingered on Kale, the human interloper glowing with alien light. That night, Elira confessed her fear, in a rare moment of vulnerability. "I am heir no longer. Without the crown, I am nothing." Kyle, exhausted but unbroken, answered, "Then maybe stop living for a crown. Live for yourself." The words struck her deeper than any crystal shard. For the first time, she wondered if her fate was not the throne, but the bond they shared. The throne may have rejected her, but in Kale's presence, she felt something stronger than any empire could give, the chance to forge her own. Word of the shattered crown spread far beyond the capital, carried by merchants and whispered by travelers. To the common folk, it became legend, the empire's perfect order fractured, not by a rival prince, but by a chained human and a princess bound in forbidden light. For Kale, the attention meant nothing but danger. For Elira, it was worse. It meant eyes everywhere, waiting for her to stumble. One evening, as they walked through the glass gardens, trees of crystal shimmering under moonlight, they felt the bond pulse violently. A stranger was near. From the shadows emerged masked figures, their blades carved from living crystal, glowing faintly with corruption. Rebels. They claimed the throne had been poisoned by lies and demanded Elira renounce her heritage. Their leader pointed at Kyle. "The human is the infection. End him or be ended yourself." Elira hesitated, her hand trembling over her weapon. Kale, unarmed, glared at her. "If you kill me, you kill yourself too. But if you fight with me, we show them we're not so fragile." His defiance lit her fire. Together they moved in rhythm neither had trained for, Elira's blade singing arcs of crystal light, Kale improvising with chains ripped from his own shackles. The garden lit with sparks, shards, and the clash of two worlds standing together. Fanmayo, the rebels fled, leaving blood and crystal dust behind. Elira staggered. She realized something terrifying. Not only had she chosen Kale in that moment, her body had wanted to. The bond was no longer just survival. It was becoming trust. Perhaps even something more. That night, Kale sat under a crystal tree, staring at stars that weren't his. Elira approached, exhausted but restless. She whispered, "I don't know if we're meant to save this empire or destroy it." Kyle, without looking at her, said, "Maybe it's both." And for the first time, she didn't argue. The council, desperate to sever what they saw as corruption, sent Elira and Kyle into the Crystal Labyrinth, an ancient trial said to break false heirs and confirm the worthy. No one had entered in centuries, for within dwelled shards of consciousness, the memories of rulers long dead, hungry to devour the unworthy. The labyrinth opened with walls of glass so tall they reached the sky, shifting like mirrors. Elira pressed her hand against one, and instantly memories bled into her. Her childhood training, the weight of every expectation she had ever borne. Kale touched another wall and was hurled into visions of Earth's ruins, hunger, chains, and his people abandoned. Each mirror showed them their deepest scars, but the labyrinth's cruelty lay in the bond. Each wall magnified the tether, forcing them to feel not just their own grief, but the full weight of the others. Elira gasped and collapsed as Kale's memories of loss crushed her chest. Kale staggered, drowning in Elira's suffocating duty and her terror of being unloved. "Get out of my head!" she screamed, clawing at the crystal. "Get out of mine!" he roared back. They nearly broke. But when Elira fell to her knees, choking on Kale's despair, he knelt beside her. He gripped her shoulders. "We're not enemies, not anymore. If you fall, I fall, so stand up, with me." She met his eyes, her crystal scar glowing softly, and found strength in his stubbornness. Together, they pushed through the labyrinth, not as prisoner and princess, but as two souls carrying each other's wounds. When they emerged, bloodied and shaking, the labyrinth shimmered and collapsed into dust. The trial had ended itself, a verdict no one could deny. For the first time in history, the labyrinth had chosen not a ruler alone, but two bound as one. Their survival only deepened the empire's fracture. Some hailed Elira as chosen, her bond with Kale proof of prophecy. Others cried treason, claiming the human was a parasite corrupting the crown. Riots erupted in the lower cities, crystal towers burning with both rebellion and devotion. Elira and Kale were forced into hiding within the Undercity, a maze of broken crystal spires where outcasts and thieves lived beyond the crown's gaze. Here, Kale thrived for the first time, among people who lived like him, raw and untamed, unafraid to spit at thrones. Elira, draped in a cloak to hide her scar, found herself listening to the laughter of children playing in shattered alleys. For the first time, she saw her empire not as jewel and crown, but as flesh and soul. One night, Kale guided her into a tavern carved into crystal roots. The people sang, drank, and roared without fear of councils or crowns. Elira, uncomfortable, at first, eventually joined in. She even laughed, truly laughed, at Kyle's terrible jokes, and the bond pulsed warmly. She confessed in that moment, "I was never meant to rule from a throne, but maybe I could lead them here, among the broken." Kyle grinned. Then maybe broken isn't so bad. But their peace was short-lived. A shadow crept into the tavern, the shard hunters, assassins bound to the council, sworn to destroy those who defied the empire. Their leader, masked and towering, announced, "The crown rejects impostors. Tonight, your bond ends in blood." As blades unsheathed, Elira and Kale stood together in the center of the room, side by side, no longer princess and prisoner, but a pair who had begun to believe their fracture might just be the Empire's salvation. The Council could not tolerate rebellion any longer. They summoned Elira to the High Court, demanding she sever the bond by killing Kyle publicly. As she stood before them, the air heavy with crystal incense, Elira's body shook. The counselor's voice rang cold. A crown is obedience. You have given us only fracture, but the bond betrayed them all. As Elira raised her blade, intending to feign obedience, the shard embedded in her chest flared. It linked her with Kale more deeply than ever, showing every counselor her truth. They saw her memories, her secret laughter in the Undercity, Kale's defiance in chains, their fight in the labyrinth. The truth poured out like wildfire. The court erupted. Some nobles cried blasphemy, others wept at the vision. In the chaos, one counselor struck first, driving his crystal spear into Elira. Kale screamed as the bond lit his body in agony. He fought through chains of guards, pulling her into his arms. Elira gasped, blood seeping into his shirt. If I die, the bond dies too. They'll never have me. Kale lifted her with raw strength, leaping through shattered crystal windows as arrows rained. He carried her through the night, the Empire itself collapsing behind them. In that moment, Kale realized the crown was not just fractured, it was rotten. And their bond was no longer rebellion. It was revolution. Elira's wound did not heal cleanly. The shard within her chest split further, fracturing into patterns across her skin. She began to glow faintly, veins of light winding like a second crown. She confessed to Kale in a hushed voice by the campfire, I am no longer Elira. I am the bond itself, and it will consume me unless... Her voice faltered. Unless you carry it too. Kale hesitated, staring at the shard's radiance. To take part of it meant pain, perhaps death, but he grasped her hand, pressing it to his chest. Then we carry it together. Always. The shard responded, splitting again, embedding itself into Kale. He roared, fire racing through his veins, his body seared by alien crystal. When it ended, he looked up, and his eyes glowed with the same fractured light. From that night, they were no longer princess and prisoner. They were twin heirs of shards, marked as something new. Villagers began to whisper when they saw them. Not rulers of blood, but rulers of bond. Songs spread in secret, stories of the human and alien who shattered crowns only to forge a greater one in fire and crystal. The council, learning of their survival and transformation, panicked. They will not rule. They will end us. And in their desperation, they summoned an ancient weapon buried beneath the capital. The Shard Titan, a colossal beast of crystal that once destroyed empires. The earth split open as the Shard Titan emerged, towering and jagged, its roar shattering mountains. It marched toward villages that had begun to shelter Elira and Kale, crushing homes with each step. The Empire hoped to turn its wrath into fear, to remind people why crowns mattered, but Elira and Kale could feel it, even from miles away. The Titan pulsed with the same shard light as their bond. It was connected to them. They realized the Empire was not in control of it. They were. In the heat of battle, they mounted stolen crystal steeds, riding through fire and chaos as the Titan bore down. Elira hurled spears of shard light from her hands. Kale swung chains glowing like molten glass. But the Titan struck back, its crystal fists flattening armies, tearing the land itself apart. Finally, Kale leapt onto its arm, climbing like a soldier storming a fortress. Elira, bleeding and furious, followed. They met at its heart, a core of living crystal thrumming with energy. Both pressed their glowing hands against it, and the Titan stilled, It bowed, kneeling, before shattering into countless fragments that rained down like stars. The people fell silent. For the first time in living memory, an empire's weapon had not destroyed, but surrendered. And at its center stood Kale and Elira, scarred, glowing, crowned not by ceremony but by defiance. The empire lay divided, the old council dead or fled, the crystal crown in pieces. Yet instead of seizing the throne, Elira and Kale built something different. They forged a hall not of polished crystal towers, but of shards gathered from the Titan, each one etched with the names of the fallen. When people came to swear loyalty, Kale refused them. "We don't need subjects," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We need allies." Elira smiled faintly, finishing his thought. "A throne is not weight upon the people, it is the people lifting together. In time, humans, smuggled into the empire, emerged from shadows, no longer hidden slaves but partners. Aliens who once feared Kale now touched his shard-scarred hands in awe. The empire did not return to its old ways. It became something else. Something fractured, imperfect, but alive." One night, Elira stood by a shattered window, gazing at starlight. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. Kale joined her, his glowing eyes reflecting hers. "Every chain I wore led me here, to you. So no, not for a second." The bond pulsed between them. Not pain, not chains, but something warm, something eternal. And beneath broken crystal skies, a new empire was born, not of crowns or obedience, but of love forged in fracture.